Let's start with general information. Pirate Warriors 3 was released on March 26, 2015 for the PS4, PS3, PS Vita, PC a while later, and Switch port in 2018 that included all DLC, which is how I originally played the game, but for this video I recorded it on the PC version, which I think you should probably avoid, but I'll discuss it later in the video. I suppose I should start with the visuals of the game, which are mostly based on the PS3 version of the game, and even then the PC port doesn't clean up the visuals that much, comparing it to the actual PS3 version or even the Switch version. Textures are fine, but they look kinda iffy sometimes, like there's one in the third level. Frame rate is rock solid, even when the action gets heavy with dozens of enemies on screen and a bunch of effects, cause this game gets flashy. The art style itself is faithful to One Piece designs. I think it isn't the best way this world has looked in video game form. Other games released after this have more graphical fidelity, like its sequel, and it doesn't beat Unlimited World Red as my favorite art style, which looks gorgeous, but it still looks good enough in my opinion. Characters look basically like you would imagine One Piece character looking in 3D, with outlines and even different shading effects in some places, but sometimes the expressions don't translate as well, like look at Luffy's mouth. And then there's characters like Caesar. What the hell am I looking at? The character models themselves look good, with the subpar textures of the game sometimes going over them. One quirk that I noticed about the PC version was the characters sometimes have on their bodies what I can best describe as air bubbles, like when plastic that's supposed to be airtight ends up with air inside of it, like these books I have. I don't really know why it happens, and I've only seen it happen to PC port. It's a bit distracting, especially in cases where the actual models are shoved in your face. Also for redhead characters, when they enter Kizuna Rush and enter Logia state, they have an effect that depends on what type of Logia fruit they ate. The only time that I think it looks weird is with Kuzan, and that's only in the Switch version. For gameplay itself, like I said, frame rate never seems to dip, and it has a lot of effects that make the combat much more satisfying. Especially a special move that has Thanks also to the sound. Obviously it adds another layer to how fun the combat is, but I'm more interested in the music, because man does this soundtrack rock. It does have a few tracks from previous Pirate Warriors games, and in terms of level themes, I'll talk more about it when it's relevant in the story discussion, but jumping the gun a bit here, I honestly really dig the soundtrack. I'm good to pump the blood during gameplay and good to listen outside of gameplay when I'm editing or investing in Bitcoin. So yeah, in summary, the graphics of the PC version are mixed. I think that the visuals are mostly pleasant, nothing that looks that bad, but it could definitely look better. And it does on newer hardware, but that's besides the point. The soundtrack, however, is pretty good, almost entirely great, aside from a couple of tracks. And maybe you can say it doesn't count for this game since a lot of great tracks are from previous Pirate Warriors games, and you might be correct, but the fact you can play the game with that selection of tunes, I mean, you gotta count for something, right? Pirate Warriors is a 3D action game, but it isn't something like DMC, Bayonetta, or more personally relevant, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. As the Warriors in the name suggests, it's a spin-off of the Warriors, or Muso as I'll be referring to it, franchise created by Koei Tecmo. Starting in 2000 with Dynasty Warriors 2, cause one was a fighting game, so no one talking about Dynasty Warriors, and it revolves around the Romans of the Three Kingdoms in China. It'll eventually spun out in different sub-series, with Koei's own Samurai Warriors based on the Sengoku period of Japan, Warriors Orochi, a crossover of Dynasty and Samurai Warriors, and a bunch of licensed games, covering properties like Mobile Suit Gundam, Berserk, Zelda, the topic of today's video, One Piece, Persona 5, Fire Emblem, Fist of the North Star. Point is, the Warriors formula is something that has spread into a lot of licenses and IPs. So what is said formula? In short, Muso games revolve around you beating the living hell of an army of enemies. The definition of a one-man army. You select a character, use their usually simple combo pool, and tear through the enemy opposition. It isn't very complex, especially during its first outing back in Y2K. I guess you can consider it a cousin of the Spectacle Fighter. I think nowadays it's a bit more apparent. But when it first came out, seeing as Dante's Bizarre Adventure was 1 year away, it was more like an old school beat 'em up in the arcades, and like those games, it was / maybe is a bit of a button masher. I'm sure you can engage with the nuances of combat system and really learn how to use the characters effectively, but I'd be lying if I told you just mashing the X button didn't give you results. Now, obviously future Muso games, mainline or otherwise, have built over this foundation, adding more layers to the combat. But these games, at the end of the day, you don't have it like other games where you have a large pool of defensive, movement, and offensive abilities. You got attacks, maybe a block or dodge in the case of Pirate Warriors. Best of luck. But I'd say these are also power fantasies. Getting to beat an entire army and seeing the kill count in the corner does make you feel invincible. Honestly, it doesn't have to be simple just via Power Fantasy. Doom can also be considered one, and it can get plenty difficult, and other action games do depend on mastery of the mechanics to make you feel and look awesome. But sometimes, you just want the easy solution. What cook a gourmet meal when you just feel like ordering a hamburger? Now, I'm not an expert on Musou games, I haven't played that many, so I'm more so talking as a casual player rather than a hardcore one. For standard Musou, I mean, not Pirate Warriors. This video will discuss Pirate Warriors combat in depth, or attempt to, anyway. So the combat in this game is, on the surface, not that deep. You have a 5-hit light combo and a 3-hit heavy combo. Since I played this game on PC with a DualShock 4, I'll be referring to these as square and triangle, same if you're playing on PS4. Or if you're playing on Switch, Y for light and X for heavy combos. To perform them with the light and heavy attacks, you need to press square or triangle a certain amount of times, and then press the heavy attack for light combos or the light attack for heavy combos. This is slightly different from other Musou games, where the heavy attack run is instead an action rather than a combo. Each character has the same input, so it's easier to jump into them if you've never played a certain character. I think I'll just show you the inputs on screen rather than telling you, but as you can see, even though the moves are different since they are different characters, the commands are the same. There aren't any other inputs, like pressing X and then after a quick pause, pressing X again compared to mashing X, or an attack if you press X during dash, or even holding the X button to get a different attack. Damn, I played a lot of Assault Spy. There's also the L action, which depending on the character you're playing as, could mean an extra attack, a charge attack, an attack that supports that character's moveset, a defensive move, or just whatever the designer felt like doing that day. Remember I said that regular Musou had a heavy attack be more so a special action? Well, jumping ahead a bit, in Pirate Warriors 4, what the L action would be is instead the triangle button, like Luffy's pistol. Obviously each character has a special quirk, maybe like an elemental effect or whatnot, but I'll discuss it once I get to character discussion. You can perform a special attack by pressing circle, or A on Switch, that you need to have a certain amount of special attack gauge filled in order to perform, and that attack can only use 1 bar of the gauge, or use 2 bars once you've upgraded the character with coins. This attack can stun enemies in front of you, signified by them turning yellow. The radius depends on the attack, so some characters have a large radius and some have a smaller one. It isn't super useful with regular fodder, but with larger enemies, it can keep them from moving so you can deal damage. And the attacks also create shockwaves that knock out enemies that are farther away from the attack, and sends flying all enemies in the vicinity. Another thing to point out is that the game has almost zero aerial combat, save for the launcher attacks that catapult enemies into the air in a different way depending on the character. This all goes on with the square triangle triangle combo. I also kinda wish that the heavy combo was 5 inputs rather than 3, but I see that more as a minuscule nitpick rather than an actual flaw. You can also lock into enemies with L2, only to be used with larger enemies. Now, the system by itself is, at least to me, a solid combat system. You have enough variety in combos so it doesn't feel too repetitive too fast. The combat is visually very satisfying, because of how each combo knocks away a bunch of enemies. As a Musou game, it's all about defeating as many enemies as possible. The attacks have a very large range, regardless if it's a sword swing, a punch, or dropping a nuke on the enemies, but I think there are extra options that elevate the combat a bit further. Firstly, there is a dash button. You can perform a dash when you press X on a DualShock or B on Switch, and you can hold it to run, since there isn't a horse or any other means to get to places. But I find it better that way, since I can always go fast and not dependent on some horse, while your actual walk speed is total molasses. But the important thing is a dash. In the tutorial page for your dash, it said that if you've done a combo, dash, and then immediately press the corresponding button, you can keep the combo going. This is very important. This works for a variety of reasons. For one, since in normal play most regular fodder die in like 3 hits once you're buffed enough, you can push them into another group of enemies to then continue your combo and rack up the KOs. But it'll also depend on how far the dash will go. I found this a bit inconsistent since sometimes it didn't take you very far while pushing a group of enemies, other times it pushed you much further, and sometimes it just skipped past them. But there's also the enemy shield. When fighting a strong enemy, basically any named character, they can enter a stance where they become immune to your attacks, and if you keep hitting them, they'll stagger you, breaking your combo. Now you can break their stance with a special attack, if you're a normie, but you can break their stance while performing a combo and then dashing into them. Also, I think dashing into enemies carries a bit of damage, and since you can dash after your first input, it isn't very risky to hit them and dash into them, and then breaking their stance. But then there's one last benefit to the dash. You can use it at any moment and it will cancel the attack you're doing. Doesn't matter if you're in the air, your character will just teleport to the ground and even teleport back up into the air if you continue your combo and it happens to be in the air. Not only can you cancel an attack chain if you need to book it, but each time you finish a combo, there's also a small animation that stops you from immediately attacking again. It takes like a second, but you can also cancel that and immediately go back into the offensive. So this will allow you to juggle large enemies and combo their asses into oblivion. It's nuts. And then you can cancel animations if your action is already triggered, like the beginning of Zoro's L action for example. You can cancel it and make things quicker. There's also the Kizuna Rush. While damaging enemies, you not only fill the special attack gauge, but you also fill this bar on the left of your character's portrait. This bar was introduced in Pirate Warriors 2, but this game changes it with the ally system. You see that there's someone peeking under the bar? That's an ally you can call at the end of your combos as a sort of finisher. They have another use in combat which involves these exclamation marks that are one of the 3 criteria for getting S ranks. The Kizuna Rush has 3 levels, and once you reach level 2 of the bar, you can end your combo with an attack by your ally by pressing either the square or triangle button, depending on the attack. And this will add you those exclamation points, one for each enemy you defeat, and extra if it's a larger enemy, like a commander or a strong enemy. Once the gauge is full, you can press the right trigger and activate Kizuna Rush. If I can compare it to something, it might be like Devil Trigger in DMC, or more personally relevant, Jack the Ripper mode in Metal Gear Rising, where it's a state that jacks up your damage and depending on the character, it will also have a different status effect. So each character has in their name 2 effects. Most of them are simple stuff like doing more damage to a specific type of enemy, having more damage or defense, that kind of stuff. Going to a Kinemer or Royal Disposition, which is exclusive to the characters that have Conqueror's Haki and does damage to enemies by just standing near them. And not much, but the other effect, Paramecia, makes the characters attack faster. And since it's used by characters with Paramecia type fruits, that's like 14 out of 35 playable characters that are much faster during the Kizuna Rush. But wait, we're not done. There's also an effect trigger depending on what character you activate it with, and I think most and not all are based on quotes said by characters relating to the effect. If you pair 2 characters that are teammates, be it Marine or Pirate, you get Can You Call Me a Crewmate, which increases the amount of time you spend in Kizuna Rush. If you pair someone who help each other, it's thanks for everything, making it so you don't take damage during Kizuna Rush. I guess it's helpful even if by the time you're leveled up enough, enemies don't even damage you. If the pairing are rivals, you get I'll be better than you. And with it you can stun enemies much quicker. Love is always a Hurricane is definitely the most limited and least useful. With it, your Kizuna level increases by 1 if you deactivate it early. Basically, instead of starting at level 1, if you turn it off before the bar depletes, instead you start at level 2, which you can already do if you press L2 again before it depletes. So... And the only characters that can use it are Sanji with any women and Hancock with any character except Luffy, Chopper, and Fujitora for different reasons. I think also Alvida can use it, but I don't know exactly what activates it with her. And finally, You're All My Family, which as the name implies, is the effect when you pair 2 characters who are family, though fun enough only 2 characters that have this effect are blood related. This will only happen with Whitebeard and his commanders, and Luffy with Ace, Sabo, and Garp, and it allows you to slow down time considerably. Now this sounds pretty good, but it isn't as useful as it sounds, since larger enemies are invincible while knocked out on the floor, while they activate their own Kizuna Rush, or just take a while to get to the floor when they're flying up. That means it'll take a while to damage them again. It can be useful, but it's also a bit of a double-edged sword. Also, each ally has a chance to activate their hero power. It's random whether or not you get it, I think, but it makes it so you can charge your Kizuna gauge faster. And it also adds 1 more level to the max, which takes its purple color. Once full, the hero power is activated and you get a different effect depending on the character. I won't go into detail about it since sometimes it makes allies stronger, makes enemies weaker, that kind of stuff. The only noteworthy ones are those that can shoot projectiles across the entire battlefield, like Smoker, Lucci, Akainu, Kusan, etc. And finally, yes, I know, if you press the special attack button, you will perform a combination of special attacks from you and your allies. So if you already have 4 allies, which is the limit you can have active at once, you basically have 5 special attacks, which, as you expect, damn! Kicks 9 yards of ass. Well, that was a lot to take in. Even with all I talked about, I don't think this combat system is that complex. The most mechanically complex part is the dash move, and even then, it's fairly simple to get the grips with. The rest is probably more deep than an average player just playing the story mode and a few dreamlog missions, but for those who decide to engage with the combat and get to the nitty gritty of it, it can be satisfying. Let me talk a bit about the enemies before moving on. Obviously you can have the best combat system in the world, but if you don't have the meat bags to use it on, what's the point? The center enemies are the foot soldiers, bottom of the food chain. Their damage is peanuts, and the most interesting thing going for it is they sometimes change depending on the missions. They can be pirates, marines, snow soldiers, fishmen, zombies, these lobby dudes, and they can carry swords, rifles, or bazookas. When you capture an enemy territory, if it becomes blue, the enemies inside of it will become nervous, signified by their empty health bars. If you do a certain attack, these enemies will be sent flying by the same shockwave as a special attack, which is also signified by the red Japanese symbol. I suppose it's denoting that enemies were sent flying by the shockwave? I don't think the game properly explains what these are. At least I never saw any mention of them in tutorials. These are the majority of enemies you'll be taking down. Since Moose is about taking down an entire army, the regular fire should be easy to defeat. And also since, well, basically that's what you do in the show. A single attack, even pre-time skip, could send dozens of these marine schmucks flying like they're paper clips. So it's fitting that One Piece has a Musu series. Then we got commanders. These are beefier enemies that you can lock onto, so they are definitely intended to be focused on, since either way your attacks are big and wide enough that you take regular enemies on the way. They can be the aforementioned classes, though aside from the dudes with bazookas and the dudes with long weapons, there are also the giant variants. These are bigger and they're much harder to stun. And Nightmare Log and higher difficulties, these guys take so much damage to put down, even in Kisuna Rush. And finally we got the strong enemies. These are basically the enemies that are actual named characters, playable or otherwise. These are also the ones that give you coins that buff your stats. They can block your attacks, which you can bypass by dashing into them or by grabbing them. And if it's an end of level fight in Legend Log or Dream Log, they have a segmented life bar. I guess so that you don't kill them with a single attack with your level 70 Tashigi. And in the story mode, they have a special attack that can cover a good chunk of the arena. And sometimes they have an extra move or two, like Lucci's healing move, which is 10 tons of push. And if you defeat a strong enemy during the Kisuna Rush, you get extra coins. The coins are useful for leveling up your character, since the normal levels will only take you so far, and they can also increase your special attack bars and skill slot. They also serve to break a character's level limit and unlock special attacks, but I'll talk more about them later. You can also add skills to a character. You have a limited amount of slots to add skills. Imagine something like Hollow Knight's charm system. These can range from character specific, like Mantra for Nell, Gorgon Eyes for Hancock, Essence of Sand Power for a Crocodile, so on. Enhancement for actions or combos, letting you charge attacks faster, increasing damage or defense every 500 kills, or something like Captain's Wisdom that charges your special attack gauge automatically. There's some that I initially didn't see much use for, like the one that makes enemies take more damage in the air in a game with no aerial combat. These allow for a bit of customization since its usefulness can depend on what character you're using. Like for example, only a few characters can charge attacks, so it's only to them that the quick charge skill is useful. To cover what's left of combat, I should talk about character specific quirks. So that's a good segue into character discussion. The game has a roster of 37 characters, not counting that some characters have different movesets depending on the costume, and that includes quite a bit of fan favorites and even some neat inclusions that were sadly omitted from the successor. I'll go over all of them, but not everyone will be described in equal detail. You don't need an extensive thesis on why Ace sucks. Luffy is definitely the character that most people will immediately gravitate towards. So he had to be pretty fun to use, and he is. He has an attack that launches enemies with an axe and then beats them with a Gatling gun in the air. I'm not saying Gomu Gomu because I don't want to repeat it like 20 times in the script, and I'm not saying Gum Gum because I'm not demented. Well, maybe a little. His rain attack that gets followed by the sphere is my go-to attack pre-time skip. His rocket is pretty good to take out a straight line of enemies if you don't want to use his special attack, and his storm attack works if the enemies are too spread apart. His grab isn't too noteworthy, but his second heavy combo, Whip, then Bullet and Balloon, is pretty good. Second most used attack between pre and post time skip. Yeah, I should talk about that. A lot of characters have versions from before the time skip and after the time skip in One Piece. A lot of them have changed looks between these periods, nicknamed New World costumes, but a few characters, Blackbeard and the Straw Hats, have changed movesets to reflect that. Since during the time skip they all grown abilities and powers, all the post time skip movesets are vastly superior. Now, all characters are in 2 underpowered. Nami's actually pretty similar. Robin has a lot of weaker attacks and her special attack might as well be throwing pebbles at enemies. Usopp has a pretty good special attack, but moveset wise isn't that fire. Chopper. We don't talk about Chopper. Brook can't freeze enemies, and Frankie has a mechanic that he needs to restock his cola every few attacks. Or they become weaker, and at some point you can't even perform them at all. And it doesn't really bring anything interesting to the table, just press an L every so often. So I'll just talk about the New World versions of every character, even if I have to ditch the Enies Lobby look for Robin. Oh yeah, that was about Luffy. Post-time skip moveset changes a few things, like the rocket was changed to the Grizzly Magnum, which is the best attack for Luffy. It packs a huge punch, it feels a lot of the Kizuna gauge, and you don't even have to charge it like the rocket. The cannon at the end of the light combo was changed to a giant pistol, and the storm was changed to the UFO, which is still spammable. His L action is a pistol. Pre-time skip can be charged for more power, but it was too sluggish to be a combo finisher, cause it can cancel the attacks. Post-time skip is a jet variant, which is faster and can be charged for a triple shot. I mentioned it with the rocket, but Luffy can charge attacks, which some characters can do, but Luffy is the only one that can charge his attacks before a combo, or in certain attacks that can create a button press for more power, like the rocket, the axe, or the hammer. The Kizuna Rush also adds a few extra attacks, or extended the duration of already existing ones, and in the case of Luffy it changes some entirely. The giant pistol was changed to the elephant gun, and the jet pistol was changed to the snake shot, but it can't be charged anymore. Pre-time skip add attacks like the flail, the mallet, and the bazooka during his aerial windmill. Kizuna Rush attacks for Luffy post-time skip are the jet pistol, hawk rifle, etc. I discussed some of the New World changes since he's probably the one you'll play the most with his pre-time skip moveset due to the story. There's also the matter of Luffy's overdrive. In a couple of Kizuna rushes, like Usopp and Luffy's, the character has a special overdrive that changes a bit of their attacks. Luffy has a second gear. Luffy has only a second gear since this game was released a bit before Gear 4 was introduced, and that's a fish that Pirate Warriors 4 has to fry. He obviously takes his second gear look, becoming a more pinkish color and letting off steam. I think he may or may not get a speed increase since he's a Paramecia type fruit user. He already had it, but his animations might be playing tricks on me. Pre-time skip Luffy also gets Jet Pistol only in Kizuna Rush, and one attack does change. The Gatling gun goes from walking to staying in one place. I think I like Luffy as much as I do because he's really fun to use the dash with. Sounds like a dumb reason, but you won't get that from every character. And finally, his special attacks, Rifle and Gearzar for his pre-moveset. Rifle is pretty good and Gearzar is fine, but it makes Luffy smaller for a bit, which doesn't make it as useful to me. Post moveset has Red Hawk and Elephant Gatling Gun, which are very good even if I only use the Elephant Gun despite the fact it is double the cost. Don't worry, the character breakdown won't be as detailed for everyone, just the ones I like. Damn it. So right where we start to see that it was clearly a favored moveset between pre-time skip and post-time skip characters. And he also has attacks that I actually prefer from his post-time skip variants. You see, some of the characters that have different movesets also have the issue of reusing certain attacks. Like Zoro, he has his Onigiri attack as his finisher and another combo. Sanji has 2 attacks where he throws enemies into the sky and launches a storm of kicks upwards. Well, he also uses a couple attacks, but we'll open the can of worms when we get to it. Anyways, Zoro has a pretty cool moveset. His attacks feel very vicious compared to other Zoro in the roster. Pre-time skip is one of the only characters that I'd say he's not that far off from his post variant. He's pretty fun. Of course, I'll only use this one when I'm in the story mode and I don't have other options. One of the attacks I actually prefer is his third light combo. His blue fire thing might actually be better, but his pre-time skip attack has more oomph to it. His New World moveset incorporates his 9 sword style in light combo, while his pre-moveset had it as his special attack, which Zoro isn't too hot in that sense. They pack a punch, but they are limited in range, basically whatever's in front of you. And I only use his Purgatory Onigiri when I'm not using pre-time skip Zoro, which uses 2 bars of his special attack gauge. He also has a very spammable skill with his first heavy combo that makes him spin around with his swords, because most people I've seen using Zoro on videos spam this one a lot. I wonder if these games are not as bad as people say. His L action is either Death Lion Song or this move that I don't remember the name of. The post variant is maybe better because it attracts enemies even if it's in the air, and it also damages ground enemies, but come on. That lion song is so much more badass. I'm gonna be more brief with other characters, so next one is Nami. She's okay. I think I might save you more time telling you that you can have fun with almost every character. Even if they have their quirks and such, they all have the same inputs, so it's easy to jump to other characters. Unlike other titles where you have to learn entirely new playstyles, combos, and have slightly changed the way you approach combat. So Nami uses a climb attack. She can make clouds that can shoot thunder, and she has certain attacks that make clouds spawn above enemies and you can make them shoot lightning by pressing L, though there's an attack that does that for you. The special attacks aren't too hot. The first one feels a bit weak, it lacks impact, and the second one, well, it's more powerful and it can charge a lot of the Kisuna gauge if you play it right, but also lacks a bit of impact. Her pre-time skip ones were somehow better. Usopp has something similar. His special attack, Impact Wolf, has good coverage in terms of length. This one reaches quite far, but it isn't as powerful. And his background attack launches enemies into the air, which is fine, but I generally don't like characters like this. He has a very projectile heavy moveset. He's still fine, but in a game where melee combat is a focus and you have someone with projectiles, Sanji. Okay, Sanji on his own, he's fun. He has a couple of repeated attacks, which is a bit lame since they're both launchers that only attack enemies that are above you, i.e. the ones you throw into the air. You know, every character has an attack that launches enemies into the air. It's always the first combo, which gives use to the skill I mentioned earlier that gives extra damage to enemies suspended in the air. I mean, I don't use launchers that much, but I digress. His first heavy combo does spin in the air that doesn't do damage for some reason. I mean, he's still fun to play, but, and this is a huge Kaido-sized but, he has a big problem. He can't hit women. And to any normal person on the street, I will sound extremely psychotic, but in trying to be accurate to the source material, Sanji can't harm women. He just backs off like when you hit a strong enemy while it's blocking. Now during the legend log, Sanji is only available in missions where you don't have to fight women. Screw that. In Alabasta, you have to use Sanji to 100% it, and you have to fight Tachiki and Robin. But anyway, it's a bigger problem during the dream log where you don't know if any women are going to appear. And even then, they can invade the battle in any moment. The only way you can dish out pain is if they are hit by a shockwave or by Sanji's second special attack, Hell's Memories, that launches enemies into the air, but also makes a pillar of fire that damages the chumps below. So there is a way around it, but still, it's a bit hard to play as a guy. Special attacks, okay, General Watch Your Step is fine, I guess. A bit too long, and his other special attack is pretty strong. Though sometimes the camera just goes into the cinematic position that it has for every single character, and sometimes just go behind the character like it's normal gameplay. And it happens only to this special attack, to only this character. Weird. Brook can use his music to put enemies to sleep, but his post time skip variant can also freeze enemies. But he also has worse special attacks. Nothing terrible, but I prefer his pre-special attacks a bit more. Otherwise, he's okay. I think maybe I should speed things up even more. Buggy is okay. He has a cool gimmick of swinging his hand to attack a group of enemies, and then you can continue to kick someone else's nuts. And his Buggy Ball is pretty strong. Mihawk is pretty fun. His gimmick is that every time you do a standard light or heavy combo, meaning if you press the same button 5 or 3 times respectively, his sword charges up. You can charge it up to 3 levels, making his attacks more powerful each level. His combos also change slightly, becoming more devastating as well. There is also an easy way to charge it a bit. His L action is a dash that automatically charges his sword faster, without having to input basic light or heavy combos. You can still charge it further, or go with it as is. His first special attack, Black Blade Wild Slashes, has more range, so it's more useful for bigger hordes of enemies, but his Black Blade Void does more damage, so it's better for stronger enemies. I suppose with his big ass sword, he would be a more heavy playstyle, but he's no less agile than Sora, say. Crocodile has a move that can steal enemies' health into the zone, which is cool, not much else to say. During his Kisuna Rush, he can use the poison on his hook to further damage enemies. I don't know why it isn't just a move where he poisons enemies. He also has one of them countered that during the Kisuna Rush is just a regular attack. Perona can use her ghost to give people depression, which you can only do with heavy combos, and if they're depressed enough, you can press L and poof them away to Brazil. She's all about shooting little ghosts and occasionally hitting enemies with your teddy bear. That's probably full of bricks. Gekomura can place enemies in his black box, which with the right skill can make them take a lot more damage, and also steals enemy shadows to fill up his gauge, which as far as I'm aware, powerful I think. He can also call his minions for a couple of attacks, but being honest, he's one of the characters I have less fun with. His heavy attacks leave him very vulnerable, so those are rarely viable. Even his special attacks aren't that good compared to others, he's just kinda eh. Blackbeard is the only character aside from the Straw Hats to have different movesets depending on what costume you wear. And he changes between his Yummy Yummy no Mi moveset and the one where he shares it with the Gura Gura no Mi, Whitebeard's fruit. He also shares one of Whitebeard's special attacks, even though in Blackbeard's case, it's his first special attack as opposed to Whitebeard where it's his second special attack. This makes him one of the few characters where I think both special attacks are extremely effective. He's one of the most annoying characters to fight against though, since his Pitch Black Star not only does a lot of damage, but sends you flying. Not to mention he can pull you closer or suck you into the ground. He runs kinda funny, like he's rapidly approaching your location. Doflamingo can use strengths to control enemies, and one move allows him to restrain them so he can charge his Conqueror's Haki. But maybe it's a bit weaker compared to the other character that also charges his Haki. Even if he has the advantage of keeping his enemies still while charging, he also has the combination of Paramecia and Roller Disposition, so he's a lot faster and does damage to enemies around him while in Kizuna Rush. But I found it to be even faster for some reason. Other than that, Overheat and Birdcage has some pretty solid special attacks, and he has this one attack, his first heavy move, where he slashes with giant strings, but I feel like it's something misses the enemies right in front of me. I could be wrong though. Law is another one of my top characters. Every time you attack he creates a room, which is the only way he can dish out the pain. Even hitting enemies with your sword does little damage, but he can be far from his room and he'll still do damage to enemies inside it. He automatically creates a room when attacking, but you can also press L to make one, which is a lot better because it's slightly bigger and attracts enemies. His first heavy combo is pretty good, but also pretty spammable, where he does his counter shock to enemies. His third attack, whatever it is, fills a lot of the Kizuna gauge. His other attacks are also pretty good, like the one where he swaps the enemy's heads for explosives. Yeah, T for teens. His first special attack, Scalpel, is fine, but his second special attack is very good. It's instant damage over a large area, mimicking when he destroyed the SAD production in Punk Hazard. Overall, one of my favorite characters to play as. Hancock is also one of my favorites, but you don't have as much to talk about. She can turn her enemies into stone with the exception of Luffy, Fujitora, and Chopper. Her third light combo is the same as her fourth, but with only one hard arrow instead of several, so her third combo is basically obsolete in my books. She also has a counter that gets turned into a regular attack during Kizuna Rush. Another victim. Her slave error isn't that great, but Perfume Farmer makes up for it. This thing shoots the Kizuna gauge up the clouds. She's one of the first characters I began to main, aside from Luffy and Tashigi, and I don't know, maybe it's her simple but fun moveset, maybe how fun it is to slap enemies with his name. Jinbei is one of the slowest characters, but he also feels like a powerhouse. His heavy attacks are molasses, but it's fun seeing him hitting people with fish. Vagabond Cannon is a pretty good special move. I used to not like him that much, but once I got over the fact that he was a much slower character, since I normally prefer things to be faster, he's pretty fun. Marco is the only one with a semblance of aerial combat, since almost if not all of his attacks launch enemies into the air. And so, he's the only one that the aerial knowledge skill is useful to, since almost every character can launch enemies with one attack. His Phoenix Fires are pretty cool, allowing him to heal with his special attacks, so he's a bit more unique than other characters. Next is Ace. Dude, just play Sapo. Ace has fire powers, so he has a couple of cool attacks, but his first special attack ain't too hot. And the second one is an improvement, but it has an extremely weird issue. I don't know if I can illustrate it here, but doing the same motion with the analog stick, you can see that it has different movement, and worst movement at that. With a few tweaks, he would be better to play as, but as is, it's probably just superior. Like Natural 1, Whitebeard might be one of the most powerful characters, using his Gura Gura no Mi to cause earthquakes. It just looks awesome whenever this cracking effect appears. And he has a planet's worth of oomph. He's a bit slower, but he's a tank. Really fun to use even if you prefer speedy characters, like I do. Shanks is another one of my favorites, and also one of the most powerful characters. He has certain attacks that can imbue his sword with Haki, though it looks more like pinkish flames. His L action appears to slow on time, never really find a use for it, surprisingly. His second heavy combo has him using his Call of Conqueror, and all his attack does is just walking slowly, killing his enemies only with his Giga Chad energy. His fourth light combo is just exploding the ground, and his first heavy combo is a charged up blast of Conqueror's Haki. It makes you a sitting duck, but when you charge it enough during the Kizuna Rush, oh boy. His first special attack is really good, but his second one, to the heights of piracy, just skyrockets his Kizuna gauge. Ah, so good. And you know, I like his normal attire, but I also ask,
Does it come in black?
Now we get to Tashiki, possibly my favorite character in the game. At first, it doesn't look like a fun character, but once you get the hang of dash canceling, she becomes top tier. Her first light combo has its uses. The second light combo is a flurry of slashes, which is great for keeping enemies still. Her third light combo helps a lot when feeling like she's doing a gauge, and her fourth light combo doesn't make much sense why she's using it. It looks a lot like Mihawk, so I actually thought that she was somehow trained by Mihawk during the time skip. I didn't know at the time that it was Zoro who was trained by Mihawk, but whatever. And it's good for doing damage while you go fight other enemies next to you. The first heavy combo is very good, but it's only worth a damn and it's Kisune's extended version. And the second heavy combo is one of my most utilized. Her L action surprisingly has different variants depending on the inputs. If you press it at the end of an attack, she slams her sword into the ground. If you do that, but push the stick in any direction, she does a forward slash in said direction. And if you press L while not attacking, you'll do a really powerful slash. Since it takes a bit for her to get the sword out of its scabbard, or saya, whatever, it does limit its usefulness, but when you do put it right, yeah, like I said, using dash canceling with her, she becomes pretty fast and very fun to use. The first character I grinded up to level 100 on Switch, and how I complete the dream locks, so yeah, she's pretty good. Smoker is okay. He can slow down enemies with a smoke, they even fall slower. His special attacks are mostly focused on damage to a small group rather than spanning a large area, which I suppose is good when fighting strong enemies. Garp sometimes feels like a wrestler. He can grab enemies with various attacks, which makes him good at bypassing the shields strong enemies use. With L, he can throw a cannonball. And his attacks? Well, you're basically a licensed chiropractor because some of these attacks, oh boy. Like the boss said,
let's rearrange some architecture, Doubters.
Except in this case it's the enemy's bone structure. Kizaru is the only other character that can knock enemies into the air with a good chunk of his attacks, though not to the degree of Marco. He can shoot lasers that explode, and while both special attacks leave some to be desired, I think he is still fun to play as. Fujitora is... what else can I say? He's probably the most powerful marine in the game. I mean, just his L action is a charge meter that might as well be a goddamn nuke. That is probably more powerful than the special attacks of 50% of the roster. His attacks are also pretty solid. His first special attack opens a hole in the ground, and his second special attack might as well be called Armageddon. And in Kisune Rush, most of his attacks end up dropping one or more meteors onto enemies. The amount of catharsis I get from playing as him due to how powerful he is, I mean, roll the clip again. Akainu is good, I'd say. The bastard can make volcanoes on the floor and make them erupt, which does quite a bit of damage. Both special attacks are pretty effective at killing enemies. Right, Ace? Ace? Nah, he's sleeping. And Eru... yep, that's vomit. He has a gimmick of charging lightning into enhance certain attacks, and you can charge it with his first and second heavy combos, with the first charging more with the trade of taking more. You can charge up to 4 of these bars, which I recommend you max out and use his third light combo. The dragon can fill the Kitsune gauge like nothing else, which is a bit shocking. Alright, I'll stop. And he also has a skill called Mantra, which enhances his ability to charge lightning. It doubles each charge, which means first light combo charges all the gauge. God damn. Lucci is the only zone that can switch between his two forms at will. While others transform during an attack, you can press L to switch between classy and rich women's coats. Some attacks differ, but his light combos are only in leopard form and heavy combos are only in human form. Both special attacks are similar, mostly for closer enemies. He's cool, I guess. Kuma can use both his Niku Niku no Mi powers to shoot pod-shaped projectiles, and his pacifista modifications to shoot lasers, and can even send enemies to Brazil. Both special attacks are fine, though Ursa Shock is much more effective. But I don't know if his first special attack gets more powerful the more damage you receive. That would be a cool detail. Ivanko can use his R action to enlarge the heads of his enemies, and make them bump into other enemies, which is cool. His first special attack, while not that good offensively, can heal you, which is also something Marco did, but I forgot to mention. Magellan can make poison hydras come out of the ground, and he obviously has a poisonous effect on enemies. He can even detach his horns to attack enemies. What? Both special attacks are fine, not much to comment. Caesar is one of the characters that I thought lows when I first played as him. They didn't grab me at first, but replaying him to record a script, yeah, he's pretty fun to use. He can throw candies, make smileys rain, and detonate them with your attack or the R action. Both special attacks are cool, I guess, and he's a good character after revisiting him. Kuzan can freeze enemies and make large spikes and other things. His second special attack is quite cool. Ah, damn it! His R action is kicking enemies to shatter them when they're frozen. Oh yeah, T14s. I don't know, let me talk about Sabo. Sabo also has the Mera no Mi, like Ace, but he also utilizes Haki, and his Dragon Claw with just one attack being... God damn! He just crushed that schmuck's skull! His fire powers are also way better than Ace's. Like, this is Ace's Fire Fist, pathetic. And this is Sabo's Fire Fist. His second special attack, Dragon's Claw, Dragon's Breath. Well, to make the best nukes, you must evolve and become the nuke. His combos are pretty cool. His second light combo creates a pillar of fire that you can control and then teleport to wherever it is with the press of the R button. He's another one of my favorite characters. The combat as a whole is fun, but again, not very complex. You can probably spam 1 or 2 combos and it will still be considered optimal play. But I think its simplicity can help it, considering the target demographic for this game was One Piece fans, some of which might not be interested in schmooving like you do in other action games. It's still very fun to knock out entire armies, the whole selling point of Muso. Damn, that was long. How long do we have left? Well, let's move on to Legend Log, basically the story mode, and how it adapts to One Piece storyline. While also critiquing its gameplay aspects, I'll be mostly talking about its story and any special gimmick the level introduces. But I'll give you a rundown of how battles work. In the Legend Log, you enter a battle, you have your allies, the enemy forces, and a few territories to capture, that either become blue and make the enemies inside have an aneurysm, or it becomes grey and isn't really anyone's. Your objective is to complete missions and eventually reach the final strong enemy, or something else depending on the plot. In Legend Log, aside from capturing objectives and defeating enemies, you can also get escort missions, which are as fun as about any escort mission in any video game ever, or defeating enemies in a certain time limit. Really, between missions nothing much varies gameplay wise. You beat up enemies in every mission with a different backdrop. The most you can do to add variety is using different characters. I was originally going to go on a tangent about why you should only use Luffy during the story mode, which I still recommend because A, most people are going to do that anyway, and B, it'll help you if you go to Dream Log and use another character but don't want to grind them to current max level. But the issue is fixed in a way, by being able to buy levels, with increased stats and anything. Granted, you can only buy levels up to the level of your highest character, which is still why I recommend playing as Luffy. Once you finish the Legend Log without playing any Dream Log, you should be level 40 or more. Anyway, main campaign includes 22 levels, and each one takes between 15 minutes to half an hour, give or take. So the game is meaty enough for people who are only going for a story, in about 15 to 20 hours, which is what it took me to beat it. Each mission also has a legend and treasure events. The legend is an image that is divided into 9 parts, which in itself is part of a larger image in the gallery. You get one of the 9 parts by doing objectives stated in the legend. All levels have you complete the level, beat it in hard mode, achieve an S rank in time, KOs, and the exclamation sign that you get while defeating enemies with Kisuna Rush triggered, one for getting a general S rank, defeating the level's big boss with a Kisuna special attack, triggering all treasure events, and one that can vary from level to level, as can the difficulty of these objectives. Treasure events are certain cutscenes that are triggered by doing something specific, normally defeating someone or a number of enemies in a time limit, and they are differentiated by a question mark on the map. You need to do both to get 100% on the Legend Log, and get coins specific to this mode, but they're not necessary to enjoy the game, mostly to max out characters, which you might not care about depending on how much you're willing to engage with this game. But I think I should move on to how the Legend Log adapts to One Piece storyline. The game starts as Romance Dawn, the first One Piece arc, and goes through this plus Orange Town, Sierra Village, Baratie, Arlong Park, Logue Town, Drum Island, Alabasta, Jaja, Skypia, Water 7, Enislavi, Post Enislavi, Thriller Bark, Sabaudi Archipelago, Impel Down, Marineford split in 2 parts, Return to Sabaudi, Fisherman Island, Punk Hazard, and Dressrosa with an original ending, which we will discuss later. The levels are also divided into chapters. The first chapter includes all of East Blue Saga, and the final chapter encompasses everything post-time skip up to that point, but other than those two, there's no reason why the Water 7 Saga also has Thriller Bark in the same chapter, for example. In terms of what it adapts, well, it's mostly what you expect from an adaptation of most of the One Piece arcs. Aside from the fact that a few arcs are cut, mostly because in the context of the game's narrative, they weren't very plot significant, or there weren't enough material to make a level dedicated to them, so they were either completely omitted, like Reverse Man or Davy Back, or whatever important detail they have is conveyed through text, like Amazon Lily. Characters that are important to the arc, but don't have any use in gameplay, like Iceberg, Dr. Kureha, Kobe before his glow up, and Spandam, for example, are only represented through a single still, even though they sometimes do appear in cutscenes, so they had the models lying around somewhere. But whatever. Also, a lot of the lore and world building is gone, obviously, since most people playing this have either already seen the source material and know what's gonna happen, or just don't care. It was probably better for the game to exclude these elements. The game starts with Roger's execution, and then to Shanks giving Luffy his straw hat. Luffy's meeting with Kobe is told through text, like many of the things in the game, and then the majority of the story is told through these comic book panels, which might be a cool callback to the manga, but feels more like generic comic book aesthetic to me. Could be wrong though. Aside from that, the story is told with these pre-rendered cutscenes at the beginning, middle, and end of the stage. They look alright, but they look off sometimes. And also compared to the excellent combat animation, sometimes the animation and the cutscenes look pretty weird, but it recreates some of the best moments well enough. At the end of the mission, and every other mission really, you have to fight the big enemy of the respective arc. Crocodile in Alabasta, and Nero in Skypia, Lucian and Ilari, and so on. When you beat the boss, you get a cutscene where Luffy delivers the coup de grace to his enemy, which is the same as the anime/manga. And it's always accompanied with the track I'll Surpass You.
やっとあいつを助ける方法が分かった。こんな部屋があるからいけねえんだ。痛くもねえあいつの居場所なんて俺が全部ぶっ壊してやる。
次乗るなんで黒党種族ゴ
ムゴムの
On that note, the music in the first level, the first improvement, was pretty good. I think Buggy the Clown is one of the taller stages, since there's a bunch of stairs and places to jump off from. You have to escort Nami to a certain territory. This happens sometimes in animation where you have to escort a certain character to the territory, and since they always move at a walking speed, yeah, riveting gameplay. Captain Kuro of the Thousand Planets have you zigzagging through a map that's more tall than it is wide, which is fine. The Dawn Salver is almost completely in the ship wreckage, and it must have been one heck of a ship for the wreckage to be so big and sturdy to hold off the impacts of combat. Arlen Park introduces the water gates, which is only used for this and Fisherman Island. The music is pretty good also. And to cap off the first chapter, the legend begins. A rain-soaked battle in Lowtown. That is also okay. To start the second chapter in the only snow stage, you have to chase down Wapol and capture a bunch of territories so that you can find him properly, and the track that plays is, again, pretty good. We skipped Whiskey Peak and Little Garden to get to Drum Kingdom, but I guess they weren't good enough for Warrior's treatment. You know, it's still really in text why they had to go to Drum Island, because the whole reason they had to go to Drum Island is in Whiskey Peak. Then jumped into Alabasta, you need to defeat both Mr. 1 and Mr. 2, but if you defeat them with a character that fought them, Sora and Sanji, you get a cutscene of them beating up their opponent. Next up, we have Jaja and Skypia. Jaja has a pretty good track, Strike at Hyena. But the stage itself is alright. You fight Blackbeard for the first time, and Skypia, man, why are the colors so muted? I don't think a place from any One Piece art should be this muted in colors. It all looks so dark compared to other places, which look fine in comparison. This level also has you calling in a character to break a barrier of some kind, in this case using Viper's laser to break these cloud barriers or something. And by the end it's only Luffy and Viper in the map, which is only Viper if you're using Luffy. And you remember the moment where I never realized that Luffy was immune to the lightning? Yeah, no surprise, it isn't as funny here.
俺の前ではなエルト
そうよ。少し考えればわかることだったのよ。もしかしてルフィはエネルにとって世界でたった一人の天敵。
And it also happens with Perona's shock in Thriller Bark. Chapter 3 is all the Water 7 saga plus Thriller Bark. The Water 7 stage takes place during the night when the Straw Hats are framed and CP9 reveal themselves. So everything prior to that is told via text dump, and Usopp and Luffy's fight is a cutscene, unless you're using Luffy, in which case you have to fight Usopp. Again, something happens a couple times during the story. It's nice to have a very slightly difference when choosing another character. Enies Lobby might be one of the best stages, and I am biased since Enies Lobby is my favorite One Piece arc. You only get to fight Jabra, Kaku, and Luffy since you fought Luna at the end of Water 7, and the second fight with Luffy, where the latter activates his second gear, is simply a cutscene. So Khalif and these two chumps aren't even mentioned. And like Alabasta, you get a cutscene where you beat Kaku with Zoro and Jabra with Sanji. The fight with Lucci though is kinda crap. He has the ability to self-heal, and he likes to spam his special attack that makes him invincible in this duration. And since you need to beat him with a Kitsune attack, it can waste quite a bit of time. So let me talk a bit about the Jet Gatling Gun cutscene, which stood out to me. I mentioned how each level ends with Luffy giving a coup de grace to his enemy, and normally it's a pretty cool moment, and are translated well enough from the original source material. But this one is edited so weirdly, like how it shows that Luffy's punches are so fast that it looks like a bunch of fists. It doesn't have the same punch, as the anime. Just look at them side by side and you can tell the difference. Even Luffy's screaming is weird. I'm not mad. They just botched one of my favorite One Piece moments. Anyways, the post-Enies Lobby stage is alright. Fine, you need to help the panty thief get away. Without context, that sounds kinda weird, like you're helping the sex offender. And just cross paths with Garp and juiced up Kobe. Not that type of guy. Screw him. And Aokiji, or Kuzan, it shows up with a light bar the size of Nami's extended sorcery climate act. You also need to play this level to have the privilege of crushing your opponent's balls. Or Respect the Women, which still does a lot of damage, but I doubt it's comparable to a forceful external vasectomy. Story Park starts with Mist blocking your map, and the stage itself is kinda dark and convoluted. You check the bin to reunite with your crew. After defeating Perona, the mist clears and you proceed to the rest of the stage, which is kind of a pain in the ass to get from one place to another, and it doesn't help that there's a huge boss in the stage. You have to fight Oars, and just, of course, county-sized. You need to scramble from one place to another to beat him up. Now, if you know what you're doing, you can beat him pretty quickly. Doesn't mean he's not fun. Yeah, the mission is one of the lesser battles in the game. Even though the track from the stage, Beat the Nightmare, is pretty fire. The fourth chapter is the entirety of the Marineford saga, starting with Sabaody and an escort mission with Hachi. Yay! And at the end you get the assistance from Lot to beat the pacifistas in Kizaru. You still get your ass handed to you in the cutscene though. We skip Amazon Lily, and the next stage is Info Down, where you get help from your past enemies, plus Jinbei and Ivankov. Jinbei can clear files that you could probably jump over, and Crocodile can destroy a specific kind of door. But you swap fisticuffs with Blackbeard midway through, but they don't bring up why he wasn't impaled down, to find new members for his crew. In the game, your best guess is that he just went to spit on Luffy's face. Marineford is split in two parts. The first one being the initial battle, when Aokiji freezes the field and they raise a siege wall, and the other stage being when they save Ace, and when he gets donutified. The first part will have you defend him from Mihawk's slashes, which do 0 damage if you are hit by one, and it ends with a fight against Aokiji. The second part can end a lot faster using Luffy, by beating Akainu, whose fight has a pretty fitting song, Magma. But if you use another character, the save will continue and you fight Blackbeard, which is another case of the stage being different depending on what character you use. Nice.
かが見つけ出す。その日は必ず来る。
The One Piece! The One Piece is real!
The final chapter takes place after the time skip, starting with Return to Sabaody. There's a scene at the end of Fisherman Island arc where Jimmy explains what happened to the world during the time skip, and that's just thrown at the intro. And you won't even be seeing the mud asshole or the fake straw hats around here. You need to get your crewmates to 1000 Sunny, and then you need to wait until the Sunny gets to the other side of the map. Ball, Hancock, and Perona lend a lot more assistance in the original arc, but not much else to say. Sanji gets turned to stone maybe? Wait, does he turn to stone? He was supposed to nearly die because of his nosebleeds. So why this? Either they just reused the stone effect from Hancock, or they wanted to avoid blood. Because now that I think about it, this game doesn't have blood, even if they could have blood in a T-rated game. Slight tangent, sorry. Fisherman Island stands to me as one of the levels that excluded a lot of its story. This arc excludes King Neptune, Shirahoshi, and the princesses. Hodi's lackeys or Vanderdecken help basically everything up to the Jinbei fight with Luffy, which is how the level starts if you use Luffy. If you use on a Straw Hat, it's just a cutscene. But using Zoro, Usopp, or Brook, you start the level from inside the castle. Neat. But yeah, all that stuff about the poneglyphs, the ancient weapons, Joy Boy, Noah, it isn't there. Hell, the fight between Luffy and Hody isn't even on Noah, unlike the original arc. You just find on some room and speedrun through the Red Hawk and Elephant Gatling gun.
Segundo.
次こそその腕食いちぎって。
タフさは奥越えだな。
巨人柔術水心裏さめ。
Damn, you're gonna kill the guy. More. Bone Hazard takes place exclusively on Caesar's lab, and you have to rescue your allies and clear paths before an extremely generous timer comes down to 0. You do it again, and by the end it's only Luffy, Law, and Smoker. And the level limits the whole deal about the giant kids that Caesar drugs. Song's pretty good though. And finally, we're right up at Dressrosa, the current arc at the time of this game's release. Since the arc wasn't finished, either was close to ending by the time the game came out, the level's an original story. It changes a variety of things, like how all the Straw Hats are present. The Coliseum portion is only to get Ace's fruit, Burgess shows up, like in the original arc, but even Blackbeard shows up to support Doflamingo. He skedaddles once you beat his ass though. Kuzan also shows up to help. Sabo and Luffy confront and deliver the coup de grace to Doflamingo together, and Doflamingo just runs away at the end. And a bunch of plotlines have just dropped, like how Doflamingo took over Dressrosa, his backstory is the Celestial Dragon, Kiros, Rebecca, the Toy Slavers plotline, the Drawers, every ally from the Coliseum. Hell, you don't even fight any executive or high-ranking member of the Doflamingo Pirates. You don't fight any Doflamingo Pirates aside from maybe Bellamy. I don't know, it's interesting seeing how someone tried to make a finale for a huge arc with just a bare minimum. Like an architect finishing a building with only pencils. Hey, the boss is probably the best in the game, because he's the only one that feels like a boss. Doflamingo summons his string clones, and they can help him carry out an attack. They can also kill them, weakening the larger attacks. It's not really much, but a proper boss fight is better than barely a boss fight at all. The gameplay in the Legend Log is pretty much the same. Harmless most of the time, like I said, but completing the Legend Log 100%, now that's a bit of a different story. Most of the Legend Log isn't too hard to get. By playing the stage in hard mode and getting enough KOs, enough of these, don't wait around for 5 minutes doing nothing and beat the boss. When getting an overall S rank, you got most of them. But the one with special conditions or treasure events, that's when, I'm not gonna lie, it just got kind of tedious sometimes. Alright, most of them are just finding a strong enemy with a specific character, taking over territories, or defeating a few enemy commanders. A couple of missions have you destroying something. Most of the missions involve doing these tasks, and they're fine, but a few of them do make it a lot more tedious to 100% the game. Sometimes not even for the mission itself. Here's some more examples. And legend requirements too. What the hell? 1. A lot of treasure events require specific characters, so a bunch of these missions need to be played multiple times if they have more than one character required to complete the treasure event, and the missions range from 15 to 25 minutes, give or take. And nothing comes close to the summit battle where you have to play 4 times, and that's if you have enough hindsight to complete the legend. Though if you're bothering with treasure events, you already have an idea of what you're doing. I remember a couple of times where it tells you to defeat X enemy in the time limit, but you don't have a time limit, so you just kind of make a beeline to it. Most of the example being Garp in the war's conclusion, but also defeating Viper in Skypia. War 7 has this ridiculous mission where you have to completely take over a territory in front of Iceberg Smashing, and you're just taking over the same territory over and over and over and over again. I feel like I was going insane by the end. In terms of legend requirements, a good few need you to clear the stage where a villager fleeing, which isn't very hard. Sometimes you have to defeat a character multiple times, like the Crocodile twice in Alabasta or the Minotaur 4 times in Impel Down, or in War 7 where you need to beat the messenger every time he appears, or he'll call reinforcements and you lost the legend. In his lobby, a legend requirement titled Successfully Complete All Your Allies' Strategies, you need to beat Javelin Kaku, destroy a panel that will lock a door in Luigi's route. Wait, what does it say, Luigi? It destroys a panel that will lock a door in Luigi's route, but before he is about to pass the door or it won't work, then you wait for Usopp and Frankie to get into sniper positions, and then you go into the fight with Luigi. After that, you go back in through the hole that Frankie blasts, even though you have no reason to do so, and then you get the legend. And you aren't told any of this, you just kinda have to guess it. Thank God for game facts. Marineford parts 1 and 2 have you beating all the strong enemies. It's simple in part 2, but 1 needs you to get to Hancock before Luffy does, and Kuma can just leave the server. I think if Luffy gets to Hancock, so don't let the kid near the Twitch stream. Fisherman Island makes you beat the stage without a commander carrying the good stuff, get to Hody. And at the beginning, it ain't too hard if you're paying attention. But in the second half of the level, you need a lot of hindsight, and it takes me a lot of tries to nail it. Dressrosa also needs to complete all strategies, which is basically destroy the Denden Mushis with coups on what to get him and don't let allies flee. Or at least that's what GameFAQs told me. Alright, that covers the story. It gets a bunch of lore, and I barely covered the tip of the iceberg on what was left out to make a story mode a reasonable length, and the ending is kinda crap, but the gameplay side is still pretty entertaining. And the cutscenes, most of them, that have Luffy kicking some guy's ass are pretty fun to watch, and I assume most normal players would leave it there, but join me as we go deeper. In the main menu, aside from the Legend Log and Free Log, I'll wait to play the story mode with any character and costume you desire, and under those two with the Dream Log. After short introduction, framing it like it's the Grand Line from the actual One Piece, you get into the Dream Log proper, and it's a mode that consists of mostly randomized battles, each one with its own rank. The rank is shown to you on the bottom right corner over your KOs, and is decided by 3 factors: the amount of KOs, the amount of exclamation marks you get from defeating enemies while in Kizuna Rush, and the time it takes to beat a battle. I used to think that the rank shown in battle was only for KOs or exclamation points, but the rank is for the level as a whole. It's pretty easy to get good ranks, since unlike other games where you rank on your actual performance, damage, variety of moves, this game says not sad, just use Kizuna Rush a lot and you're golden. So, like I said, each Dream Log battle is semi-randomized. Each one has a small description. You can sometimes choose a faction that will determine which character you fight against and which are your allies in the Kizuna Rush, and inside battles, depending on the mission, the enemy you have to beat is always set, but the characters that appear, the events, invasions, and the stage itself is all random. It helps, because not every battle will be extremely samey. I mean, it probably is, but the Dream Log is also the best place to grind characters, because at the end of the Legend Log, you might have a character of level 40-ish, and that's only if you stick to Luffy, who's playable in every stage. Here, you can pick any character and beat armies to your heart's content. There are also bounties and strong enemy islands. The battles will appear at random, but you can also buy a wanted poster in the shop. These are much shorter battles. It's basically beating someone up at the beginning and then fighting the bounty, which are always named characters that are non-playable. Burgess, Alvida, Punkure, those characters. The strong enemy islands are where the playable characters reside. Your first time through, these are characters to unlock. but after the map resets, they can be random characters, and you can't use the character in Dreamlock unless you beat them at their island. These missions also randomly reward coins for defeating a strong enemy, but it's a once in a while thing. The objective of the Dreamlock is to get to the final island, which you can do, you just follow a straight line that'll get you to Shanks and finish the Dreamlock. Ha! Psych! After beating Shanks, you are told that there's a final island that you can only access after beating all strong enemies. You do that, and true pirate warriors. This level is where you fight all the Straw Hats, plus Shanks, Sabo, and Ace, in pairs, and then all at once in a small area of Sabaody, where enemies endlessly respawn until you beat the level, and if you have a single ally to do Kisuna Rush with. It's a pretty cool way to end the Dreamlock, and since it's endless, this is a place where I finally achieved the 10,000 kills. Imagine how many kills you would get if you played for the entire 90-minute timer. You can get an S rank in every mission, which you should do with hindsight, to get an S rank on every battle first time around. It isn't that hard, or it will be very tedious, since you also have a legend to complete. But they aren't too hard to complete. If you decide to go for 100%, you'll get this on the way. If you S rank every mission, you get the Call of Conqueror's coin, which is required to level break every character that uses Conqueror's Haki. Most importantly, Luffy's stuck on level 50 unless you grind the entire Dreamlock for every S rank, and you also get Pirate King Soul that increases the amount of coins you get from battles. You get the soul late in the game. By the time you get it, you already have enough regular coins to level up any character you want. And as far as I'm aware, it also doesn't increase the chance of gold coin drops, which are the ones that you actually need at that point. And if it does, holy shit, this must be Grindfist 2015 without Pirate King Soul. The game also has DLC, in the form of costumes and extra missions. I would complain that it wasn't new characters, but I think the roster is pretty good as is, and at the time there weren't many important characters that you could have added. Maybe someone from the movies, or adding story content from Astro Rosa, or from the arcs they skipped, but as is, I can't really complain if it's only costumes and extra missions, when those missions are some of the best in the Dreamlock. Not very remarkable on its own, but it is a cut above the standard Dreamlock missions. As the name suggests, it revolves around the Whitebeard pirates and Jimmy fighting the new Silent pirates. Because why? You could have done maybe versus Blackbeard pirates, but probably they didn't because there are only 2 members of the crew in the game. I mean, there's only Hody as a new Sun pirate, and they drag Arlong as an ally to him. Other than that, it's a standard battle. Only noteworthy thing is the S rank requirements. 5k kills and only C? Jesus Christ. In this battle you fight alongside Luffy, Ace, and Sabo, which makes it pretty fitting if you played using one of them, like I did when I first played on Switch, but as I mentioned, I basically only use Tachiki for everything, so that's how I played this one. You're feeling to beat Monet, Virgo, and Bellamy to take the treasure, since it takes place in Skypiea. It's kinda cool that Bellamy's here, you know, after the references in Dressrosa that he went to Sky, though it might also be unintentional. Later you fight Blackbeard's crew and finally beat Eneru. It's a fine mission, but also like the last one, not exactly DLC worthy. Battle revolves around you fighting East Blue pirates, or at least the villains from East Blue Saga. So anyone who was a villain in the first 54 episodes is here. So Buggy, Alvida, Arlong, Hachi, and Don Creek. I think it's supposed to be about Stephen I incarcerating Baroque works, even though the map takes place on Sabaody instead of Impel Down, but whatever. You have to stop them from opening territories. Halfway through you have to stop Hancock and Luffy and team up with Bluno and Lucci, which is probably not great if you're playing Robin. And at the end, Crocodile says nuts to his prison and just breaks out on his own. Why not do that to begin with? This is one of the most interesting missions in the entire game, if you've seen / read the art, but reading is for nerds, so who does it? You have 3 allies, Mr. 3, Alvida, and Buggy. And you have to complete missions to gain more allies, but if you lose a mission, you lose 1 ally, and if you lose all of them, it's game over. First mission is capturing objectives before your opponent, the second mission is defeating pirate captains under a time limit, the third one is pushing Luffy out of the square and then beating him, because if you bonk him inside the zone, he just gets back up, and the final mission is just a free-for-all. If you win a round, you get to choose which ally to bring over your side by entering the territory they reside in. The mission can be kinda tough. It did take me a few tries to beat it the first time around, but it's also one of the best, and I wish more missions were like this one. This one, like the name says, is about the Coliseum in Dressrosa. You have only one ally, Bellamy. They're trying to earn Doflamingo's approval. You do a few preliminary rounds, fighting pirate captains in La Pan for some reason, and then you get the proper, with a question mark, fight. Plus in between these rounds, you get to save villagers, defeat whoever tries to get in Dressrosa. After winning each round, Monet gives you money, and at the end you have to fight the Sabo and the Straw Hats. And Piranha's there too, I guess. It's neat considering that the Coliseum portion of Dressrosa was ignored in the actual store mode. Do you remember Marineford, right? Well, imagine Marineford, but Sabo is there. Ace is rescued, and it's on steroids. And crack. And drunk. All dry. It's on overdrive. You first have to beat Pacifistas, then you have to save Ace and Luffy from Akainu, and for that you need to beat Garp and Kobe to clear the way, but you also have to save Whitebeard from Blackbeard, then the Warlords appeared, and you have to go to the corner of the map to slap Kizaru, and Shanks shows up, and then you have to prevent Kobe from getting clubbed by a drunk father, and then you have to defeat all commanders in the area to get the Blackbeard while making sure none of your allies die. If they do, it's game over, and since the enemy numbers are through the roof, especially commanders, it's one of the tougher missions of the game. I wish I could show you footage, but more on that later. It's you against every character that's associated with the world government. Marines, CP9, the jailers are Impel Down, Pacifistas, and even the Southern Warlords of the Sea, minus Garp and Kobe for some reason, and your only ally is Mr. 2. I don't know why, in the first few times I played this stage, he always died on me, so I had to beat the stage with Kizuna Rush. Yeah, that was fun. This one is a battle between Law and Doflamingo. The latter are taking control of a bunch of other characters, and you have to defeat them and other Doflamingo subordinates to proceed and reach Doflamingo at the other side of the map to beat his ass. It isn't too complicated, even if I think the game is starting to get the idea that Fujitora is Doflamingo's dog. I mean, it hasn't happened yet in One Piece at the time, but who ended up abolishing the Warlords? Probably one of, if not the longest mission in the game. This mission makes you fight every single pirate enemy in the game, aside from the Straw Hats, and the result screen doesn't lie. It took me nearly 40 minutes to beat this stage, and I was at death's door a few times. It's probably a good place to grind experience, and hey, now I know that Shanks is so good he can't even beat himself. The other part of the DLC is just costumes, which I haven't touched upon. Outside of the legend log, you can choose a character's costume, assuming they have one. Not everybody has one, some only have a post and pre-time skip costume. Luffy has a bunch of recolor from all the arcs where he changes his shirt and pants, and there's a clear favoritism for female characters since most of them have a lot more costumes than male characters. Some of them have less costumes than they appear, like Sora has a couple of variants where he has a scar, and other where he gets different swords. Favorite game will spot the difference. Nami also has this issue with changing the Climatex appearance, and Usopp has different slingshots, but somehow no skin for Southern King, only if he uses any lower costume and activate Kitsune Rush. And like I said, most female characters have a lot more costumes than male characters. At base game, it isn't that big of a difference. DLC adds costumes to some characters that didn't have. Some actually get a costume like Ace and Shanks. Now Ace might kinda suck, but his costume is pretty fire. Damn it again. And of course, Shanks got that drip. Luffy's are inside you get Film C costumes, which I do quite like. Nami, Robin, Perona, and Hancock get extra costumes like Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors outfits. Just them. No male costumes, which is a huge cock block. Okay, Nami's are okay, but they're pre-time skipped, so why bother? Ramen gets a Dressrosa outfit, which I use more than a default war costume. Perona gets her original Zora Bar costume, and Hancock gets her Amazon Lily outfit, which I don't like as much as the Marineford one, and the 3D white one. Hey, I like her outfit a bit more than the Marineford. The gold touches are nice, and a few characters also get the Dressrosa outfit, like Law, Nami, and Sabo. Tachi gets a costume that actually smoker in her body, and I know for a fact that they were planning on making this one from the beginning, because this emote exists. The costumes and missions come in 2 packs, DLC Pack 1 and DLC Pack 2, but there's also one called the Story Pack, that includes both, plus samurai costumes for the Straw Hat dudes minus Frankie and Brook. I don't have it because I'm an idiot and I didn't get the Story Pack when I bought the game on Steam, and since they're pre-time skip, I'm not losing much sleep at night. There's also DLC that isn't accessible anymore, the Fan Gift Pack and the pre-order bonus. Now, pre-order, for obvious reasons, isn't accessible anymore, which mega blows. Not only does it have the TV backfight in the Paramount War, but it also has that Sabo costume, Luffy Film C costume that has a giant meat and bone on its back. I love this. In his carp costume, this is awesome. And the fan gift pack was a code that you got on Bandai Namco's website to redeem on your game in any console. Why not just make it a free DLC on Steam and the PlayStation Store? Yeah, well, the site went down and so did the skins. You can get them on PC via messing with the files, but if you really want them, there's a Switch version. If you're an Ice user, you can see that you earn berries and missions. But aside from using them to level up characters, there's also a store. You can purchase the movies, which are the cutscenes, the game's OST list in the gallery, a section for the dream log where you buy wanted posters to make bounties show up, and an extra section to buy costumes when made available or random stuff, like the option to change music and stages. Neat. Also, there's a gallery, which is the bane of my existence. I live my day peacefully, until remember I have to complete the gallery if I want all the achievements on Steam. Here you can read character biographies, the definition of One Piece terms, see character expressions and voice lines, you can see the legend jigsaw, and you can see your coin collection, both common and gold coins. The regular brown coin lets you upgrade your defense, attack damage, special attack gauge, and skill slots. The gold coins are used on the final upgrade for a character, or at least the final boost to your stats that the coins give you. And also specific coins are used to break a character's level limit. The level cap by default is level 50. But if you break a character's limit, you can level it up to 100, and you can unlock the Kizuna Rush moveset, making Tachigi's first heavy combo worth it down. How you get the coins, however, is a different story. The road to breaking a character's limit can be easy, like say Tachigi's, if you use her enough, or it can be like every character uses Conqueror's Haki. You are required to S-rank every Dreamlog mission to get another coin, which I will reiterate sucks. And most characters have a requirement of a coin that you get by maxing their crew level, which unless you know the ways of the force, it's a huge grind. There's also the coins you get from bounties and strong enemies. Bounties, it's easy enough to grind, but you'll be playing True Fire Words a few times to reset the strong enemies in the Dreamlog. Hey, the crew levels. Yeah, this is something you have to level up to get the expressions, voice lines, and coins of every character. But only playable characters have coins. There are guides to know where to specifically grind for them, so if you want to, go nuts. There's also a skill poster, where you can unlock new skills by completing the requirements on each character's poster, both playable and non-playable characters. You should also use a guide if you want to get all the skills or even one specific skill, because sometimes to get a character's skill, you need to get that skill from another character, so it can get confusing. If you want to 100% complete this game, this is where the bulk of completion will go. I need help. All that's left is discussing which version you should play, and there are a couple of ways to go. Firstly, I originally bought this game on Switch. It's where I play most throughout the year, but for this video, the footage you're watching is of the PC port on Steam, which I will say again, sucks. For starters, I'm pretty sure it's based on the PS3 version, not the graphically superior PS4 version. It runs very well at a rock solid 60 frames per second, but resolution and textures are weird. Worst thing is the amount of crashes I experienced in the story mode. On Alabasta, it crashed 2 times. One of them made me restart my entire PC because it nothing responded, and I was forced to skip to the cutscene. And more infamously, Dravosa is pretty hard to make it work. If it didn't crash in the middle of the stage, it crashed when I finished the level and didn't respond. I had to run it as administrator, playing in window mode while not recording, and I had to change the file name where the cutscenes are so the game couldn't try to load them. The game has problems in some of the cutscenes, and Dravosa didn't work very well until I removed the cutscenes, and other reasons according to the Steam post. So there are like 20 reasons why this port is screwed up. So you have 2 options, the PS4 version, which is the nicest looking, or the Switch version, which I recommend for the simplest reason that it's the Deluxe version. I think you can make the argument that the DLC included is mostly superfluous, since it's only skins and a few extra missions in the Dreamlog, but firstly, it's better to have the skins rather than not. And secondly, the missions in the Dreamlog are in my opinion some of the best since they were not randomized, and thirdly, Switch has DLC that you can't get anywhere. Some of the costumes and missions were exclusive to a pre-order bonus and fan gift pack, a free DLC pack. Some of the costumes and missions were exclusive to the pre-order bonus and a fan gift, none of which are accessible nowadays. You can purchase all DLC on Steam except the story pack, which I didn't bother because I have a chronic illness called no damn-given-gitis. The pre-order bonus is obviously no longer accessible unless you can pre-order for a nearly €8 game, and a fan gift pack was free but taken down. And if you don't care about the stuff, go for the PS4 version if you care about the visuals. But portability and all the costumes, The Switch version is pretty good. The frame rate does dip sometimes, but it's pretty stable aside from some visual glitches that aren't present in other versions. Like Kuzan when he's frozen, his ice model mouth doesn't move, but his human model underneath it does, so it's just weird. The game also looks like a PS3 version, but in portable it can look nice due to how crisp the Switch screen is. Maybe even better on an OLED, and you get all the DLC. And I also think this version is faster, and I also think this version might be faster. This one I'm not sure of. The gameplay itself isn't faster, but other stuff is. Now, I did really notice in the menu, it's snappier on Switch, but I also think some transitions are a bit faster. Don't take my word for it, it might be my eyes playing tricks on me. I forgot to talk about this, but the Nightmare Log is basically a hard version that you unlock after being the final island in the Dream Log. It's the best place to grind, especially after you break a character's level limit, and very hard on Nightmare Log, which was already very hard. Every mission is a level requirement of 100. Yeah, you're required to use the ship doctor skill because you're not going to survive a single mission. Well, going back to the Switch discussion, overall, for like $5 or $6 if you get on sale, which you go for very frequently, I think it's a pretty good deal. Again, avoid the PC, play the PS4 for the nicest visuals, and if you want all content, get the Switch version. Man, that was a doozy. This one was pretty tiresome to make, and you couldn't tell it took a lot of time to make. But I think I conveyed well why I like this game so much. A lot of Pyro's is not polished or tightly designed or high quality even. The gameplay is very simple and repetitive, as much of a shill I am to this game. The story is at its best a speedrun of the actual One Piece story, and it isn't a very good way to experience it. Every mission you could say is the same, just beating enemies. It's so repetitive and making me redundant. Really, as its own, it isn't that great of a game. At best, it's a good enough beat 'em up for a One Piece fan. So, why? Why do I consider it among my favorite video games? It doesn't have the story of Super Paper Mario, the atmosphere and exploration of Metroid Prime, the fast-paced romp of Dread. Now, as an action game as a whole, I've played better action titles, but it's so damn fun, man. I can remember all I want about the game mechanics, design, visuals, etc. But at the end of the day, I like one thing: simple, pure action. It's in my primal instinct, and this game does it best. It's simple. Turn your brain off, ooga booga action. I'm not saying there's zero depths or that it's completely mindless. It's just so simple for me to enjoy the game, which is why I've played it for more than 300 hours. During the recording process, I acquired an SSD, so I had to factory reset my computer. And since I didn't know that this game didn't have cloud saves, I lost about 90 hours of progress. And even though it stung, well, the game is fun enough that I would do it again. And I did. Story in a straight line to the end of the Dream Log, and that said, it has been a bit tiring. Fun, but still, I think it's time for me to put down the game for a while. Am I contradicting myself? Maybe. But when I go back to it, because I want to complete those damn achievements, I think it'll be sweeter. I do recommend playing it if you like One Piece or you like Muso. It won't change your worldview or won't be a Game of the Year worthy experience. But the game is fun, and people nowadays forget that sometimes a game is only fun, and that's enough. At least to me. Well, the Goliath is done, and hopefully we'll meet again another time and play.